Okay. The original Larry Ellison series, parts 9, 10, 11 and 12, all in one run. It's only 20 minutes left, guys, so bear with it. Like I say, watch it at your own pace, at your own leisure. Come back and watch bits and pieces, because every time you watch it, you'll pick up so much more. And it's extremely important that you get this, because it affects everyone in the world, not just America, not just Gaza, not just Israel. Remember, this is the United States. We're the 52nd state in the United States of Israel now, if we don't watch ourselves. We've got a very small window and it's closing to stop this shit.
Great, I mean, like, not good. None of this is good. This is all actually very bad. But I'll see you in the next video.
Because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And it's unimpeachable. The cars have cameras on them. I think we have a squad car here someplace.
This is Larry Ellison, the guy this entire series has been about, and his idea for the future of the American dream would make even George Orwell blush. Now, in the last few videos, we've covered a lot. A secret wife who nobody knew about, a football deal which involved Dave Portnoy and revealed everything, and how the only person who can actually verify Jo Lynn's existence at the University of Michigan is her alleged college roommate, a nuclear physicist who won't return anybody's calls. Now, I know a lot of you were asking if there were any other social media platforms you could find me on outside of TikTok, and the answer is Substack. The Drey Dossier, it's linked in my bio. That's the platform that this series primarily lives on, and it's where I'm going to primarily live once TikTok gets a little farther into the bad place, if you know what I mean. But while we're still here, let's talk about where this roommate, Ang Zhu, falls into all of this, okay? Because he plays a pretty crucial part, I think. According to what I can find online, Ang Zhu got his PhD in nuclear engineering and scientific computing from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor in 2016. Now, his research seemed to focus on real-time nuclear reactor simulations, modeling how nuclear reactors react and behave under changing conditions, predicting problems before they happen, and monitoring safety systems. This is highly specialized, very technical work. I don't know if you could tell. And he seems to be really good at it. I mean, I found one of his research papers had 307 academic citations, which is a ton, especially for a paper that was written as early as 2016. His dissertation advisor even called his work groundbreaking, said he was one of the smartest students he had ever had. I mean, this guy seems to be legitimately brilliant. Now guess what he's doing? Well, according to LinkedIn, he is the VP of R&D at, and I'm not making this up, a hedge fund. That's literally what it says. Like, he doesn't even name the company. It just says at a hedge fund in Hong Kong, and his about section, oh, this is the best part, just says he has extensive experience in quant trading. Oh, wait a second. This guy goes from being one of the most brilliant nuclear engineering minds that his professors have ever had the pleasure of working with, publishing research papers that get cited over 300 times by other scientists, to trading stocks at an unnamed hedge fund? Okay. Sure, people pivot to finance all the time. I mean, smart people like money. But you don't publish all this groundbreaking research about nuclear reactor simulations, get hundreds of academic citations, and then specialize in some of the most cutting-edge computational modeling of nuclear systems, and then what, just throw it all away to build trading algorithms? Like, I don't know, that doesn't feel like a career pivot to me. That feels like intellectual for somebody at his age and level. And maybe this would be more believable if this same guy wasn't the one who was allegedly Larry Ellison's secret wife's roommate at the University of Michigan. According to the Daily Mail, they lived together at the Willow Tree Apartments. He's the only person outside of what the university officially says who could actually verify whether or not Jo Lyn Zhu attended the University of Michigan. He's the only witness to her existence at this point. Well, at least the only witness to her existence during those years of school. And when the Daily Mail tried to reach out multiple times asking him about Jo Lyn, he wouldn't respond. He won't talk about her, he won't talk about his employer. Everything about his life seems to be very opaque, but not so opaque that he wouldn't have a LinkedIn. And if you're somebody who's just private and you don't want people to know this kind of information about you, then why have a LinkedIn at all? That's the thing. It feels like it's created to show proof of life, but not proof of anything else. And so working as a quant trader might not make a lot of sense for this guy, but you know what would make a lot of sense is working on small modular reactor technologies. Exactly like the ones that Oracle is building right now. That's right. In September of 2024, Larry Ellison announced on one of of their Oracle earnings calls that the company has secured building permits for 3 small modular nuclear reactors to power their AI data centers. Now, this was a really big deal because part of this AI arms race is coming down to a lot of these independent modular nuclear reactors, which are very tricky to install. And the expertise that you would need in order to build, monitor, and safely operate these modular reactors would be something along the lines of real-time reactor simulation, computational modeling, safety system monitoring, you know, Ang Zhu's exact kind of specialty. Look, the University of Michigan has one of the top nuclear engineering programs in the entire country. You know, they're specifically focused on these small modular reactors. They've published extensive research on SMR deployment, economics, and the safety systems. And where it all kind of connects is that the Ellison Institute of Technology offers fully funded scholarships to about 20 different students per year at the University of Oxford. This is full tuition, a living stipend, is paid summer internships, probably at Oracle, like the full 9 yards. And some of the focus areas include clean energy with a specific focus on small modular nuclear reactors and AI and robotics. And remember Santa Ono? He went from president of the University of Michigan to president of EIT Global. That's your institutional bridge between the two right there. Now think about it, you've got that $10 million Bryce Underwood football deal. Like sure, that's great for having goodwill with the University of Michigan students, but you've also at the same time got David Ellison, who is Larry Ellison's son, taking over Paramount Global, and Paramount owns CBS, and CBS has the Big Ten broadcasting deal. So when you're watching the University of Michigan football play, you're also watching content that's flowing through Ellison's media empire, and you can't divorce those two things. This is where those leaked emails from 2015 come back into play, you know, the one where Ellison's vetting Rubio, connecting him with Tony Blair, and donating the $5 million to his campaign. And now Rubio is the Secretary of State, and he's running all these visa crackdowns that are devastating these international enrollment rates nationwide. I mean, 30 to 40% drops everywhere, except the University of Michigan Ann Arbor, where they saw an 11%.
Apologise for the sound, that's not my end, that's her end.
Increase in their international applications. And you've got to make it look legitimate, right? So you've got to have some arrests surrounding that school so that people don't get suspicious. You know, in June 2025, the DOJ announces the 3 Chinese nationals that were arrested for smuggling biological weapons, all of which were connected to the University of Michigan. But then you look into it and you realize that the first arrest had actually happened 10 months earlier in July of 2024, and they just sat on it. And, you know, in the original arrest record, plant pathology experts were asked about the fungus, and they said, and I quote, "It's at the lower end of the spectrum for risk, in the same category as yeast." But it comes in handy when you need to frame it as an agro-terrorism weapon, right, when you need the public threat of it. Okay, so here's the pipeline I think they've got going on. Michigan identifies students in nuclear engineering, AI, and biotech. It is through them that they are assessed for 4 years on their technical skills, their connections, their ideology, and their loyalty. Rubio's visa crackdown eliminates all of the other competition and removes anyone who is politically problematic through the background searches that they now have to do. And then the pre-vetted students go to EIT's Oxford program, and during the summers they work on Ellison projects during those paid internships, and then once they graduate they go into Oracle jobs working on the exact same infrastructure that he needs. It's a closed loop system that they're building here, and the only person who could verify where this story begins won't return anybody's calls. Also, before we move on to anything else, there's something I feel I have a responsibility to say, because I know a lot of younger people are watching my videos, and I see a lot of your guys' comments. This investigative series is not about hating Chinese people, Jewish people, or Palestinians for that matter. The problem is not any one nationality or religion. The problem is power. The people that I'm tracing here, the Larry Ellisons, the Benjamin Netanyahus, the Tony Blairs, what makes them dangerous isn't where they were born, what they believe, or the color of their skin. What makes them dangerous is what they're doing with their money and their power. I know that this is an investigative series and we're trying to connect a lot of dots here, but just don't let anybody twist this into some form of xenophobia or anti-Semitism or some kind of anti-Chinese statement. That's exactly what the people in power want. They want for all of us to be fighting one another instead of paying attention to what they're building. Always remember, the line is not between nations or religions. The line is between those with power and those without. And never forget which side you're on. Wait a second, let me get this straight here. So in 2003, Tony Blair helped start a war that killed nearly 1 million people that was all based off of a lie. And now, 20 years later, he's in charge of helping rebuild Gaza? Yeah, this is the story of how a literal war criminal has become Larry Ellison's Employee of the Month, and it's actually wild. Honestly, this story is insane, and everybody should know about it, especially right now. Quick note before we dive into this, the full episodes and the deeper dive in this series lives primarily on my Substack, the Drey Dossier. The link is in my bio. Also, the Drey Dossier has been featured on Substack's new bestsellers list for this is the third or fourth week now, even though it's free to subscribe. And that's all because of you guys, so thank you so much. For real, I really appreciate that. That's really cool. So it's September 11th, 2001. The Twin Towers fall. America is traumatized and angry and looking for someone to hit back. Afghanistan comes first because that's where Al-Qaeda trained and that's where Osama bin Laden was hiding. But then the Bush administration kind of starts looking towards Iraq. And look, it gets a little complicated, but the TLDR is that Saddam Hussein has been on America's radar since about 1991, when the Gulf War happened. Saddam had also been playing these dangerous games lately, where he had been making it sound like he might have these weapons of mass destruction, without saying so, just kind of hinting at it. He was being deliberately vague and refusing to cooperate with UN inspectors. Why? Well, because quite frankly, he was more terrified of Iran and his own internal enemies than he was of the US. Because if he admits that he has nothing, no weapons of mass destruction, then he looks weak, and so he started bluffing about it. And Bush's team, not exactly known for their nuanced thinking, sees that and decides that it's because he's hiding something, and there could be another attack on America. So the CIA and M16 start building this case around the idea that Saddam might have these chemical weapons, biological weapons, maybe even nuclear weapons. Because America doesn't want to invade a country alone, we decide to reach out to our good buddies over in the UK. Enter Tony Blair. Here's what you need to understand about Blair, because he was not some right-wing warmonger, at least not at first. He was part of Labour, Britain's left-center party. He was into international cooperation, into diplomacy, and he had won in a landslide. He had it all. He was young, he was charismatic, and he was supposed to be different from all of the rest. But then, he decided to become George W. Bush's most aggressive salesman for the Iraq War. And a salesman he was, because in September 2002, Blair's government decides to release all these dossiers claiming that Iraq could deploy chemical weapons within 45 minutes. All of a sudden, you see Blair on every television program speaking in Parliament with this incredible passion and making these sweeping moral arguments about protecting the world from a madman and these weapons that could kill millions in a moment's notice. And when you look back on this in hindsight, it kind of feels like what Tony Blair in some ways was doing was worse than Bush. Not that Bush wasn't lobbying for this, because he was, but at least Bush had a crater in Manhattan to point to as to what the reasoning was. Real buildings fell, real Americans died, and Britain didn't have that experience, so Blair had to kind of manufacture this dread from scratch, which is kind of psychotic, very psychotic. But people were all seeing through it because, the UN inspectors were on the ground saying that they weren't finding anything. France had threatened to veto the military action, and Germany just opposed it outright. And then in February of 2003, over 1 million people marched through London in one of the biggest protests in British history. And then inside Parliament, you have 139 of Blair's own Labour Party voting against him. This is the biggest rebellion against a sitting prime minister on war in over a century. But Blair, being as codependent as he is, decides that his loyalty is to George W. Bush instead of his own people, so he decides to invade Iraq anyways. In March 2003, the invasion begins, and by April, Baghdad falls, and then by May, Bush is standing on an aircraft carrier under a mission accomplished banner. And then the truth comes out. There were no weapons of mass destruction. There was nothing. The dossier was just completely plagiarized, which, by the way, the Drey Dossier would never. The intelligence was all sexed up, and Blair had apparently, by the way, privately communicated to Bush months earlier, saying that he was going to do this before even telling Parliament anything. Why, you ask? Well, because Tony Blair wanted to show that he was supporting Americans and that he had our backs during a really troubling... No, I'm just kidding. It's because of oil and geopolitical control, obviously. And there was no plan for what was going to come next either, because the U.S. disbands the Iraq army, and then suddenly hundreds of thousands of armed men are now jobless and furious. The government collapses, sectarian violence explodes, Al-Qaeda floods in, and it eventually becomes ISIS. The death toll is just staggering. You have hundreds of thousands to nearly over 1 million Iraqi civilians who are just gone. You have nearly 4,500 American troops who are just gone. Nearly $2 to $3 trillion just gone. And in 2007, he resigns in disgrace. Even though his speech wouldn't lead you to believe that he thought it was disgraceful, I think he thinks he was right, but I digress. And then Bush leaves office in 2009. And what I find interesting about the way that Blair versus Bush handled this is that Bush, on one hand, probably did the smartest thing he ever has done in his life.
By the way, $2 to $3 trillion just gone. I think she's talking about the money that disappeared when the towers came down. There was multiple reasons why those buildings came down. I think she's avoiding saying that it was an inside job for a good reason. She's going deep enough on people. If she can extend to the Twin Towers, they'd have her locked up in The Hague as quick as a look at you. We all know it was an inside job. America did it themselves.
Which is a pretty low bar, just fading into Texas, right? He decided to just kind of keep quiet, start painting portraits of veterans, and just kind of kept to himself. And even though he had a bad reputation, his reputation kind of started to soften a bit over time. Meanwhile, Blair does the opposite, right? He decides to overcompensate by staying extremely visible in a region that he helped destroy. He decided to turn this into a business model. He becomes the Middle East peace envoy from 2007 to 2015. You know, the guy who helped blow up Iraq is now brokering peace there, which is just... And then in 2016, he starts the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Very noble. Go, Tony. On paper, it's a non-profit, very charitable, you know, helping governments modernize. And then, in 2021, Uncle Larry enters the scene. Yes, that Larry Ellison of Oracle, the guy buying TikTok, the guy who just bought Paramount Pictures, is now gunning for Warner Brothers Discovery. And if you don't know who he is, then go watch the rest of my series, because this is what the whole series is about. Ellison sees an opportunity here because Blair has access to governments worldwide at this point and has morals that are, well, let's just say, sold separately. So Ellison decides to cut a check to the tune of $257 million to the Tony Blair Institute. And it's from that point on that they start taking on the world together. Literally, the world. I mean, the Institute explodes. It goes from 200 employees to nearly 1,000. They're embedding in 45 different countries. Blair shows up, props open the door with his former PM credentials, and advises governments on digital transformations, leaving Oracle to just swoop in with the government contracts right after. Oh, and in their off time, Blair and Ellison can be seen vacationing together, which is just adorable. Occasionally Netanyahu might join. Who's to say? Who's to say? Which brings us up to September of 2025 when Trump announces his Gaza peace plan, creating a board of peace to oversee the reconstruction of Gaza. Trump announces that he will be chairing it, and the only other name that he announces is, yes, Tony Blair's. Which, you know, when you think about it, Trump almost looks normal compared to a literal war criminal who was never charged on a board of peace implementing a peace plan. Blair had been working on this for months, maybe years, but at least months. So who had commissioned him in this time for this work? Well, none other than Jared Kushner. That's right, Trump's son-in-law, who has no official role in the administration in this term, by the way. That's right, he's a privatized citizen who's running a venture capital fund with $3 billion worth of Saudi money just brokering these deals in the Middle East right now. You know, the American dream. You can kind of follow the chain here. You've got Kushner, who hires Blair, and then Blair, who works with Netanyahu's closest advisors, and Blair's also funded by Ellison, and then Ellison, who is essentially the shadow president, told Trump to do this. And so, when Tony Blair is in charge of governing Gaza, in reality, it's Larry Ellison who is governing Gaza because of the Oracle infrastructure, which far supersedes government at every level. No, and there have been these leaked plans about turning Palestinian land or what's left of it into blockchain tokens, and that if you don't want your land turned into cryptocurrency, they'll pay you $5,000 just to skedaddle. You know, just ethnic cleansing through financial engineering, that's all. And this is why Blair's history is so important, because 22 years ago, he sold a war that wasn't his under the guise of humanitarian intervention, when in fact the real agenda was oil and control. And now he's at it again, selling reconstruction as peace, when the real agenda, as we all know, is Oracle infrastructure and power and sovereignty. And this time I'm willing to bet he won't resign in disgrace. Mark my words when I say that Gaza is the demonstration, and once this works, they'll sell it everywhere. The infrastructure that's being built in Gaza's rubble is the same infrastructure that's going to run your life, if it's not already. Gaza's the demo, you're the market, and Tony Blair, well, he's the employee of the month, of course.
If we want to automate hospitals and clinics, those hospitals and clinics are not going to be very efficient if the people who regulate those hospitals and clinics are not also automated. You have to automate the patient, the provider, the payer, the regulator, the pharma companies, banks who finance the hospitals, and governments who can regulate the hospitals and collect information from the hospitals. You have to automate the entire ecosystem.
I'm sorry, automate the what now? The regulators? Like the governments whose job it is to regulate hospitals. That's who you want to automate? Not forms, not emails, but the regulators. This video clip was from yesterday. Larry Ellison said this yesterday in Vegas. And look, I know that there's a lot going on right now. There's always a lot going on, but this Right now, this is what matters. This is the important thing. The fact that he felt comfortable enough to say this out loud on stage in front of hundreds, maybe thousands of people, means probably one of two things. Either we're already past the point where anybody can do anything to stop this, or he's daring someone to try and knows that they probably won't. Before we dive in, please go over to my Substack and follow me over there, the Drey Dossier. It's free to subscribe and it's way better than here. It's the best way to support me. I'll be uploading a full reaction video to this entire keynote over there over the next few days because honestly, it's over an hour long and there's a lot that I can't cover on this platform, if you know what I mean, so please go subscribe. The man you saw at the beginning of this video is none other than Larry Ellison, the owner of Oracle. You know, the database company, the one that started as a CIA project in the 1970s. You know, the guy who owns TikTok now. And I've covered all of this in previous videos, so if you're curious for more context, then I suggest going to check out parts 1 through 11. But right now, we need to talk about Oracle's most recent venture, and arguably his most dangerous one yet, which is getting into healthcare. Now, this isn't exactly new for Oracle because in 2022, they acquired Cerner Healthcare for about $28 billion. Now, Cerner software runs in over 2,000 hospitals, so that's about 1 in 5 hospitals in America, which means that, statistically speaking, if you've ever been admitted to a hospital at any point in your lifetime, your data has probably brushed up against some kind of Oracle server. Yeah, that means your medical records, your prescriptions, your test results, your diagnoses, basically all of your genomic information. And they are not even close to stopping. They are actively signing new hospitals, dozens every year, expanding internationally. What makes this even more terrifying is what Larry Ellison said not even 6 minutes into his keynote.
But for these models to reach their peak value, you need to not train them not just on publicly available data, but you need to make privately owned data available to those models as well. And that's where Oracle plays a particularly important role, because most of the world's high-value data is already in an Oracle database. We just had to change, and it is past tense, we did change that database so that that Oracle database can take the data that's already in the Oracle database and make it available to AI models for reasoning. So the AI model can reason on not just public data, but on private data.
Did he just say that our private data that's already in an Oracle server right now, that private data has been made available for AI training, for AI to learn how to reason off of our private data, our HIPAA-protected data? And before anybody goes to just write this off as data that tech probably already scraped a long time ago, it's not. Your medical records are more than just doctor's notes and prescription pads, okay? This is you. This isn't information about you. It's information that is you, that makes up you. It's your DNA sequence, your blood tests, your genetic mutations, diseases that you're predisposed to that you don't even know about yet. It's your genomic markers for Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, diabetes. It's your family's cancer history. This is the map of your body, past, present, and future, and he took it. All of it. And they'll tell you not to worry about it, that this is anonymized data, meaning that they stripped your name off of it, so chill, guy. And you know what? If it was the 1970s, maybe I would be more chill. You know, back when tracing genomic information back to you would require hundreds of hours of tedious work, manually cross-referencing records one by one. But this is not the case anymore. Larry Ellison, you should know better than anyone that AI does not work that way. Lest we forget that AI can cross-reference millions of data points within seconds. It finds patterns and it makes connections. That's its whole thing. It re-identifies you from data sets that were supposed to be anonymous. And I'm not just making this up. Studies have proven this time and time again. 99.98% of people can be re-identified from less than 15 attributes. But also, even if anonymization worked, which again, it doesn't, why are we pretending like this isn't still a human's body? Like, this data still belongs to a human, one specific human. Do I also stop being a human being if you don't know my name? As long as you don't address me by my name and don't know my name, then I'm anonymized data just walking around. Do whatever you want with me. And to my earlier point, your biological data is not even just about you and getting your consent to use that data. It's about your entire lineage, your whole family. By them allowing AI to reason off of your private data, they're also allowing it to train off of your parents' data, your grandparents' data, your future kids' data. I mean, that's how family trees work. That's how bloodlines work. You're exploiting the whole family. So who is Larry even talking to in this keynote? Like, who is he addressing? Who wants AI models trained on my personal private data? His clients, of course. Insurance companies, banks, future employers, foreign governments. At some point, I believe he even said that AI is going to be able to figure out the best possible care that is fully reimbursable. And at first it sounds like it's for you, the patients. But remember, Oracle's clients are not patients. His customers are corporations. United Healthcare, Aetna, Cigna. What do you think those clients are paying for these AI tools to figure out? Maybe when patients cost too much, maybe how to deny your claim based off of something buried in your records, how to jack up premiums based off of genetic risks that you didn't even know that you have yet. Your insurance is about to get a lot more expensive because AI trained on your data and then decided you were too expensive to cover. So congratulations, you funded your own surveillance system. And what's so deeply ironic about all of this right now is that Congress is fighting to keep healthcare premiums from going up, hence the government shutdown. But what's so deeply frustrating about all of this is that it feels like while everybody's fighting over the thermostat, you have Larry Ellison over here who's just rewiring the entire electrical grid. Why aren't we talking about this man every single day? Why do I never hear Congress talking about this man? It's always about Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. Yeah, I get it. Those guys are also evil. But this guy is doing a lot of bad stuff, and I feel like if it weren't for me making this series, would any of you know who Larry Ellison is? Be honest. Why are your public defenders leaving it up to a neurodivergent, hyper-obsessive ginger to keep you in the loop with what's going on? So I don't totally know what we should do about this. I'm just as scared as you are. I'm terrified. But what I do know is that whenever we're loud, people pay attention. But we have to be loud. And it might sound contrite, but call your representatives. I know we're all on a government shutdown right now, but leave a voicemail. Send them an email. Tell them that your biological data is not for sale, that your body is not a product, and that you do not consent to what Oracle is doing. When the government comes back to sessions, go to town halls, be annoying, just whatever you do, do not stop talking about this. That video from Oracle, the Larry Ellison on Oracle's Vision and Strategy, Oracle AI World 2025, is on YouTube, and the comment section is still open. Just saying, do with that information what you will. He is betting on the fact that nobody is going to do anything. So prove him wrong.
Isn't that funny, eh? An 81-year-old, second richest man in the world, who's virtually running the White House, has access to all of yours and my data, all of our medical records, and yet we've got to go through Freedom of Information and pay money to get a redacted version of our own medical records. You see a problem with that? Do you know now if you go to the police station, now they're taking a photo with a digital camera, which means they're biomapping your face. They're biometrically mapping your face, your eyes, your retina, everything. Fingerprints, and they're done with an infragreen laser scanner. It's not with ink anymore. They use an infragreen laser scanner. How do I know? Ha ha! It happened to me. So, here's something that I want to jump up and down about. How about our biometric sovereignty and data sovereignty? Just because it's only data and not my name doesn't mean it's not mine. I think there's something in that. I think there's something there. We need to chase for our data sovereignty. It's sovereign data. It belongs to me. Your data belongs to you. Your biometric data belongs to nobody else but you. That's trespass. That's trespassing on your sovereignty. Not your sovereign citizenship, your sovereignty. See how they've been playing with that to fuck with your head? So people don't take up that argument? That's why they've been doing it.